Hey, good morning, all. I'm traveling, so this is a short stream. I wanted to let you guys know we're having a dojo Zoom today. You can join that if you want to discuss some things or hear some other people discuss some things. I think a lot of, I hope what's happening right now is a lot of people are getting tired of not seeing justice. Um, just as an example, like the federal government pulls out of Minnesota. They say that they're done in Minnesota. A lot of people are looking at it like a victory, but at the end of the day, like 4,000 people were kidnapped without habeas corpus. This is why I call it kidnapping, by the way. Uh, the second you suspend constitutional rights, this is for anyone on American territory, you are kidnapping them. And that could be causing a lot of injustice where people are feeling like, I'm sick of looking at this. I mean, I still feel it, but I've been doing this a while. And I just wanted you to picture exactly what it feels like in case you're not aware. The governor of the state has watched 4,000 people be kidnapped under his watch, and his only weapons he has are the word unhinged. He's going to call you unhinged if you do that. And this is the sternest word you can say in Washington is he's unhinged. And nothing really is supposed to or will happen for this because true power, when it comes to American power, true power is purely sword based. It's purely based on who holds the most weapons, who holds the most physical force. I think what you're seeing with Donald Trump is just that. It's just the truth that ultimately, unless you are willing to become the cannibal yourself, unless you're willing to step into the role of righteous uh, arbiter, you're going to be left with calling someone unhinged. And I think a lot of Minnesotans are trying to call it a victory because Homeland Security is pulling out. But again, they're pulling out with 4,000 bodies that they collected from in what, 2 months? So that's a lot. It's a big failure, but it's also just sort of how the system works. I've always believed in states' rights because I think it'd be pretty healthy if the governor was like, well, I have my own troops and we're going to have a fucking war. It's a war with ice right now. And you guys wanted to do it in the winter, so let's do it in the winter. And the governor has all of his plows, has all of the gear that he can muster from the state. He has a giant militia of people, and he didn't arm them once. Not once did he say, let's gather and kick some ass. Instead, he said, this person is unhinged and they're breaking the law. And I think that being told that someone's breaking the law is what causes people injustice. And the only reason why you feel injustice is because you think that the law is supposed to give you justice. And it's not that the law doesn't give you justice. I think it's that our definition of what justice means has a more romantic quality about it. We sort of fetishize about that. Ultimately, I think this is our biggest lesson that we're waiting to learn. The more people understood that the government is never going to punish itself, the more people understand that the government's always going to tell you that the threat is you, whether it be on an airplane, whether it be in a school, whether it be how you choose to express your imagination in public, how you choose to vote, the thoughts you choose to uh, solicit from others. You're the threat. Government's never deemed or seen that way. I think that we lost that ability once states' rights eroded. Personally, I think states' rights is as close as you could come to thinking about a militia-based government, which is really more based on community. It's a community-driven event, and each community would have a micro war. You'd never really see a national war. I don't think if we had a federal government, we would ever see a national civil war ever again. When you look back at what happened with Lincoln, that was exact same thing that happened with Minnesota. A foreign power invaded a series of states and installed an unhinged ruler who eventually was shot in the head. And we, as a conglomerate, have decided that the people that shot the dictator in the head were bad. that that's the bad guy, that that's the terrorist. And it comes down to it's impossible to really consider that the government could be a problem, that the government could be an issue. I don't think that this is when you first come to this realization, your inclination is to maybe leave society, step away. You tend to get really bitter. The natural immune response is to doubt everything. And the more you doubt, the more power you find because you find that your own discernment has been waiting there the whole time. And you take the, I use the word zetetic, but you take this real direct perception kind of definition of what you think reality is. And slowly you start to shed the assumptions that you were given at a young age. And the ones that will shed the last are the ones that you need the most, or the ones that you rely on the most, I should say. And I think most of us rely on justice. Justice is supposed to keep us tame. It's supposed to stop you from feeling obligated to have to uh, put the effort in to elicit violence on others. When you do that for hundreds of years, you start to develop a society that's very docile, very gullible, very dependent on the nature of the stories that they've been told about what justice is. When you're also surrounded by the idea that you don't want there to be predator, the idea that government is good would be sort of a maypole, a galactic center that you would build your environment around because you were hoping that this belief that you have, this religion you have, that government is good, is ultimately going to protect you. And I'm only saying this because I've come to realize that I needed to reject government. I needed to reject science. I needed to reject every single theory that I've ever heard and just start again. And you know, probably most of those theories I've rebuilt are basically the same. There's definitely some subtle differences, but the reality is the same. But my approach, my definition of these things is different. Government doesn't have the same definition for me. I know you guys probably know that government means the control of the mind, like the mentality of it, to govern the mentality. And this may seem intrinsically bad, but if you can picture how naive you were, maybe even are now, I still think I'm naive, but if you can picture your worst naive moment and multiply it by 1,000,000, you're probably looking at sort of the average person. When you start to think about the world as like a collection of people that have a certain naivete about government specifically, because again, that's one of the hardest ones to shed. It becomes necessary to have something like government. You start to realize that the naivete is actually one of your biggest enemies. The naive thoughts that everyone has about what government should be is ultimately the thing that's causing you the most injustice. It's the beliefs of others, what they deem to be the government. Seems to be when historically, when you look back at who causes the most damage, it's that. I know it's sexy to think that it's Marx or it's communism or it's socialism or it's capitalism. But no, it's people. It's always been people. So even the adage that the threat is you is kind of right. Even that adage is kind of right. But the threat doesn't actually come from a physicality. It comes from a mentality about what government is supposed to be, and a lack of the ability to drop the romanticism that we have with it. It's the romanticism that causes us more pain. And the romanticism is precisely the thing that gives us comfort from it, which I think is a really important lesson. It shows you that you could have the exact same structure that we have now. You could remove Epstein, you could remove Trump, you could remove Bondi, you could line up thousands. You could line up 4,000 bad people the same way we did in Minnesota. You could decide these are the bad people, and you could remove them from society. And what you have left will be the exact same. It'll be the exact same. There's not going to be a difference because you're looking at just the medium of collective people having a centralized thought about what government should be, about what it's meant to be. Government doesn't have to live up to anyone's expectation because none of us have ever written down what we expect from government. I've always assumed that what we'd expect from government, and I've always been grossly disappointed as I watched that assumption unfold. Even as something as I truly thought that habeas corpus was just like much more fundamental, that every single person that was grilled into them so long that there's no way something like this would work. And this is part of that disappointment because I had a romanticism about our education system that, well, at least they taught people the Bill of Rights, and they really didn't. There's so much fetish now for show me your papers, like it's everywhere. Even if you look at the voting thing now, where and the irony that our votes don't even matter because we live in an electoral college system, yet we're storming the state to steal all the voting records in Georgia, for example, because we're insisting that the popular vote was somehow flawed. But the popular vote doesn't even elect the president. Yet maybe 1% of the people know that, or like actually think about it, like actually consider it. Because truly, everyone's running on a belief of what they think government's supposed to be, and they keep pointing at the herd, either showing how it is government or how it's poor government. I say this a lot about, well, lately I've been saying this a lot to myself about things like the chair. This is that chair over there. It's a kind of a shitty chair, or this is a great chair. And every time you say this is a bad chair or a new chair or an old chair, you're comparing it to this theoretical chair that doesn't actually exist. You have in your mind an average mean version of what you think a chair is. And every other chair is measured to that and defined by it. But not once have you ever actually questioned, what do I consider to be a chair? And chairs are easy. Try doing that with government. Try doing that with a multi-tiered government that's allowed to add different tiers all you want. Basically, 1/3 of the country was able to develop a fourth branch of government, ICE, and that fourth branch of government was able to take over a 100-mile border wall around the government, and everyone who lived inside that border wall no longer had the same rights they did before, and all that was done with a 30% vote. The Democrats aren't responding to this in the way you'd expect, of course. Now, maybe you don't even expect them that, and I'd say good, you're making progress. But even the Democrats are taking this as a victory lap. It's a victory lap for them. It's a victory lap because they're saying, see how much better our version of the chair is than Trump's version. And that's really just voting for the worst of, the best evil. We have the best evil. And I get that you know this, but the injustice is going to be costing you calories. And I don't know if you know that you can shed that. You can change your definition of what you think government should be and or is supposed to be. And I want to encourage you not to, the same way that you made the mistake of assuming when you were young that government is good, I want you to avoid the folly of insisting that it has to be evil because it's not good. It doesn't match your definition. And it doesn't match your false expectations that you were given back in the days when you believed in Santa Claus, that you were so naive that you believed in Santa Claus. Why would you not believe the same about government? I think that if more people were able to do that, they'd understand they're kind of mad at themselves. They're not really mad at government. They're mad at their ability to put faith in something that they shouldn't have. And ultimately, this anger, like I was talking about yesterday, this anger is really the only thing that allows you to move. Your discomfort, your dissettlement, your disgruntledness. This is where all the change happens. This is when you start to reevaluate. What is that definition again? What is that definition again? It's it's a process. You are climbing a hermetic ladder of massive disappointment built on pedophilia, rape, espionage, a bunch of Jews that burn kittens for fun. A bunch of Benjamites, excuse me, a bunch of evil Benjamites that slam chickens into the side of walls and have really horrible views about things. The same way that we have people here that do the same. We have the exact same culture everywhere. Some are more salty because they've been dipped in salt more. And ultimately, if your definition of government changes, you're going to have more calories. You having more calories isn't going to fix government. But I swear to you, if enough people started to collect more calories every day, it would fix government. It would fix it because the second our definition changes of what we expect government to be is the same time that we start to curtail what we expect government to give us, all the powers that we give it. I think a perfect example of this is flying right now because FEMA or because Homeland Security maybe is going to be shutting down today. ICE already has billions of dollars. They're not going to stop what they're doing. But the Democrats are saying we're going to shut down ICE because it's gonna end all this. But it doesn't end all this. The big beautiful bill gives them all the money that they need. But what it does do is shut down air travel. So if you do want to shut down ICE, Democrats are going to tell you, yes, we can do that. And what they're going to do instead is shut down your ability to go on a plane. I think that if all of us understood what government was, we would go back to pre 9/11 TSA. We'd actually return to the idea of, yeah, it's possible someone could hijack this plane, and it's possible that a lot of us could just kick that guy's ass, and maybe we'll all die because one guy took it out. But government's going to definitely kill more. Government's definitely going to take an entire state hostage and literally kidnap 4,000 of its people with no trial. That's worse. That's worse. And frankly, if TSA wasn't involved, don't you think that all the corporations that run their airplanes, they would probably be like, hey, we don't want our airplanes to be hijacked. We should make our airplane better. We should make our process better. And you start to have this competition over which flights has the safest ratings. Anytime a new terrorism attack happens, each of the corporations get to say 0 days without terrorist attacks. They got to flip the number over again. The exact same way deaths happen all over the place, inside of a factory, inside of a car accident, inside of an industrial accident. All those, I think, are better deaths than death by exposure inside of an ICE facility. That's the worst kind of death because it's being done by your neighbors that are insisting that their version of what they think the government is adequate. You're gonna probably have a bad time if you think that if we're gonna try and change the world. I think you just change your caloric sacrifice, the definitions that you have about what is expected. You could look at government as a metallic predator. I do this with hospitals. You could really look at hospitals as it's not really here to make you heal. This is a place where a macrophage, this organic structure that, believe it or not, inside your body, when a cell is tired or it's starting to stress, it puts out a signal that says, can you come get me? It calls 911. Your cell calls 911. It starts to pump out an exosome. The macrophage smells that. It approaches the cell just like an ambulance. And just like when you go into a hospital and you're wearing a gown and your ass is cracked because you got a paper gown on and they rip you open, the macrophage rips that cell open. It removes the outer bilipid layer, that outer layer of the cell. It's the first thing it does. It cuts into that. And it's a voluntary act because the cell called for help. The cell isn't asking to be healed. If you look at the process, the cell never once says, I want you to heal me. The cell says, I want you to eviscerate me. I want you to take every part of me that you can find and give it to someone who could use it, some sort of resource. This is what a hospital does. And I think our approach to this is sentimental, which is cute, but also flawed because of this naivete we have. It would mean that every time someone goes to a hospital, you'd have a different understanding of it. It would mean every time you call 911, you have a different expectation of what kind of justice is going to come to you. And more importantly, every time you'd vote, you'd be voting for something that is basically here to harm you, causing you strife, and you get to manage what kind of strife you want to vote for. If we saw government in that way, government would have a lot less power. We'd be expecting a lot less from it. The less we expect from government, man, the more we expect from ourselves. And when we start to expect these things from ourselves, when we start to expect more discernment, you will find a field of autists. I'm one of them that have always been wanting to have more discernment, to have more say so over what they see. People like you too would be able to speak up more, and people would be able to hear this new definition and say, hey, wait, I can actually have a different definition of the government that doesn't have to be good or evil. It's more of a necessary service that collectively a lot of people need. And collectively, I can navigate that system because I understand what it is. It's a long term effect. It's a desire to find ourselves a brighter place in the sun. It place is there. And the only way we get there, you could argue we have to get there with violence, or we have to get there with voting, or we have to get there with apathy, all those things. Ultimately, I think you just have to get there with your new definitions. People smell your new definition of government. They smell how calm you are when you have that definition. They quiz you about what you see. And the more that you are pushing how evil and satanic the government is, the less that posture is going to be contagious. The more they are going to insist that, well, government has to be good because you're saying that it has to be evil. And neither one of those are really naming what's happening. Government is a service that we require collectively. A metallic panther that hunts you on the street. It's inside a metal cage, and it hunts you on the street looking for more people that it can put into its system and eat them. The criminal justice system. There are more incarcerated people in America than any other nation. We have more victimless crimes on our law books than any other nation. All of these things come from, doesn't come from fascism, doesn't come from communism, doesn't even come from Trump. It comes from the majority of people's expectations over what government should be. This is too difficult to think about. How do I change everyone's mind? You don't. You change your posture and it becomes more attractive, becomes more confident. That confidence, that attractiveness, that's what changes the world. And I just, that's why I'm really feel that it's not helping to be out eviling each other, discussing over, well, no, with if you look at it this way, then these people are even more evil. Even the word elite has separated ourselves from this boogeyman that we've given all this power and money to. We claim they're so much better. And I've fallen for this too, where you think about everything's staged, everything's planned. That requires a kind of sophistication that's just far superior to you and me. And I don't see that's what's happening in the world. It's quite the opposite. It's a bunch of bumbling fools that are kind of devoid of self, right? And that devoiding of self doesn't really even cause all the pain or the damage. The pain and the damage is caused by all the other people that are believing that government's supposed to be good. It's really where it all comes from. So I think you can become contagious without taxing yourself. I think you can find a spot where you can help people laugh at the folly of government. I think that helps. You can. I think pointing out the hypocrisy is lightly constructive. So you're still getting there. But ultimately, I think we need to be advocating for how to navigate this world and be comfortable with it. How to navigate the true jungle reality. Because ultimately, I swear to you, we live in a pretty polite jungle. We do. We live in a canopy that has predators in it, but man, they're really not that on top of it. Most of the problems that we see are more herd based, and that herd based is running off a collective that believes something, and we may want to blame the person that they're following, but they're only following Trump because of their belief. They have a belief that maybe government's supposed to be a Christian nationalist nation, and that their kids are being taken away and indoctrinated into a secret communistic society. That's a dangerous thought. That's such a dangerous thought that it's created a fetish of show me your papers. Create a fetish of we can round up 4,000 people in Minnesota and call it a victory. That we can have 34-time convicted felon in charge of everything, give him the power to pardon anyone he wants at any point in time. All those come from a belief that government's good. None of those things come from a belief that government's evil or government's bad. I wish Ben Franklin was here, and it may not be for the reason you think. I wish Ben Franklin was here so we could ask him how he saw all this working. My gut tells me it was much more Tadaho, much more snakes in here, much more, look, you want to find the evilest, most corrupt person you can and bestow him this honor, and you don't want to feed him. You want to give him praise, false praise. You're going to create a canopy underneath where people know the truth. And there's going to be a lot of falsehoods that believe him. That's okay, because this is what we need to survive. It's a very different definition of government. It's very much more American in the sense of how we define things. This pragmatic, utilitarian view of, well, what actually fucking works? Because there's a formula for this. And the only thing stopping this formula from working perfectly, I really do think government would work even better than now. And it would require this new definition of what we expect government to be. That's really all it takes. Nothing inside the government has to change. Just like there are laws right now preventing the preventing the violation of constitutional rights, and no one's being arrested. So too would the exact same laws stay on the books, but just the mentality would change. And if that mentality was just slightly different, don't you think that Bovino would have just been taken into custody? Like if you were governor, think about it. If you were governor of Minnesota and you were watching this happening, what's stopping you from just taking that guy into custody? You could say guns, but it's not. It's mentality. It's the collective way that people think about things. This is more at the heart, I think, of why government is this way. It's this mind war over definitions, and 90% of the people that are fighting don't know that that definition is up for change. You can't even fathom that we could change the definition of that. If there's one thing that you may see from my channel, it's that I'm always telling you, let's look at this definition again. Science is just the latest. That word psi. Psi is a word of a mental state. Science isn't called truance. It's not called rightness. It's not called correctness. It's called science. And psi is what is known. And what is known is what can be regurgitated. That's the definition. And what can be regurgitated is what anyone else in the world would agree with. So really, science isn't really truth at all. And I think government kind of works the same way. We just aren't aware that our definitions are much more pliable than you could ever think. Your definitions of things is probably the most powerful reins that you have over this world. Just how you define things. Sovereign citizens is a perfect example. If more people have this crazy bureaucratic lasagna string of sovereign language in front of them before anyone asks them anything, you would muck up the system would get so slow because you'd have to go through this process every single time because every single person was saying I'm a sovereign citizen. That would change things. The laws wouldn't need to change. You wouldn't need a new constitution. You wouldn't need new courts. You just have to be patient. The more people start to say I'm the living soil, I don't uh, recognize you as an authority. Had you have taken Bovino into custody, Governor, it would make sense. It would make sense why I owe you some fealty. But until something like that happens, what you're saying is government isn't actually government. It's something much worse. It's just a collective fairy tale that we're telling us that only a small percentage of us actually believe, and the rest of us are simply reacting to how angry we are because the fairy tale isn't true. Be like being mad at your parents because they lied to you about Santa Claus. That's a legit feeling to have. But that legit feeling could be changed. You could change your definition and realize my parents lied to me too. This is beautiful. I'm now ready for the jungle. The people that brought me into the world lied to me too. And now I know. Thank you. It's a very different it's a very different approach. It's a very different way of looking at things. Yeah, happy Friday, everybody. By the way, it's Friday the 13th, and this is a perfect example to seize this day and start to realize that Friday the 13th. Did you know in Rome right now this is the lucky day? One of the luckiest days in modern culture is Friday the 13th. Their unlucky day is the 17th. Believe it or not, there are buildings in Rome that don't have a 17th floor, the same way some of our buildings don't have the 13th. And when we removed the 13th floor, I think things got really bad. I think that's what created so much of this definition of what 13 means. It's once you start to worship the evil now has a place to be. It has a spot that it can exist, which is why I think claiming 666, claiming Friday the 13th, these are all really important things. And if you think about what Rome's doing right now, a bunch of people are probably throwing coins into the fountain today, only today, because it's a day where great fortune can be changed in your favor. Uh, Closest example would be it's lottery day. If there's ever a day that you were going to win the lottery, people in Rome think it's today. It's very different than how we look at today, isn't it? When you go back to ancient Rome, you find that that number 17, if you're wondering why it's 17, the Roman numerals for 17, if you mix up those Roman numerals, it spells out um, uh, an anagram that used to be on tombstones in ancient Rome that basically said, I lived. And the irony of seeing a tombstone that has the words "I lived" on it uh, caused a lot of Romans a lot of uh, esoteric stress. The superstition of the memory of them being entrenched in their death, saying "I lived," was seen as superstitious. And if you mix those letters around, that anagram for "I lived," it says 17, and that 17 is why they don't have 17 floors in Rome. That floor is skipped. Again, it's your definition of what you consider evil to be. I think that you should keep always seeing evil in the world, but just change what you think it's coming from. Most of the time, if you start to use compassion, you'll notice that what you consider to be evil has an important intrinsic use somewhere else. And the more you sort of tune in to what that use is, you find yourself compassionating something without agreeing with it. As I like to say here all the time, compassion is not consent. You can use your radar to sense something, but you don't have to get on board with it. I think a lot of simple, discerning minds forget that. They think that in order to show compassion for something means that you're supposed to agree with it, and that's just not the case. And then you basically would just do this with all your definitions. You'd find a way to approach every single thing you think in this way and redefine your association with it. This is ultimately what improves your posture. This is ultimately what makes you more, hopefully, contagious. Because right now the world needs contagion. And I tell you, with COVID, and even the mix of there's no such thing as virus, there's no such thing as contagion. I think this is ruining all of your power, because virus is basically just a genetic form of information that you're able to send to someone. You're able to vibrate genetic information, place it inside a protein shell, and infect someone with it. And the only way that we could admit that we are contagious, that we are that powerful, when we're trying to keep ourselves down, is to say, you got me sick. If I can get you sick, that means I can get you fucking lit. I can get you well. I can get you better. I can get you higher, faster, stronger. I can $6 million man your ass with nothing more than pleomorphic placebo emanating from myself in a protein shell that stored a little bit of information that I want to infect you with. So I think that we need to really reevaluate our definitions and approaches to everything. Try and relax more. Try and not have that default view of this has to be evil. Truly try and find the joyful irony of the fool that's in nature, because it's just reflecting you. It's just showing you how naive and foolish you've been, and how naive and foolish you now have to compassionate other people being too. And now you're unlocking the secrets of the universe. You are. So happy Friday, everybody. If you want to come to the Zoom call, we're going to start here in 14 minutes. Cameron's modding. It's been a while since we've seen him, so I'm looking forward to that. You can join Patreon. The invite's for free. It's just sitting right there. You just go into Patreon. You can just sign up there and you'll see it. And hope to see you then. If you don't make it to Dojo, just think about this idea of being, really just focus on yourself. Focus on your posture, the way you look at these things. If you find yourself uncomfortable with certain things that are happening, that's a great thing to look at. It's a great thing to work on. It's a great thing to just consider and go, why does this one particular thing bother me? Why does this one person's adage or approach or what they're saying bother me so much? Because underneath all that, if you can relax in that discomfort, you're practicing the very thing that we need to practice, which I think ultimately ends evil. This ends all evil. Compassion ends all evil. And it doesn't end it because we're turning the other cheek. It ends it because we're listening. For the very, very first time, we're listening. That's all I got. This live is a put to blow up, and he's leaving. This live is put to blow up. Yeah, I'm leaving. But you should come to the dojo. We could talk about it more there. So there you go. But many sons are good guys somehow. Yeah, I'll leave you guys to it. Think about what I said. We'll see you in 13 minutes, and we can talk about it more. All right, thanks for being here. Have a great Friday. We'll see you. Oh, I'll be back Monday in my office. So we start to finish Gilgamesh, doing some more work on Versipellis. There's a whole other layer to this, which I'll be discussing with Miguel on Wednesday. It should be a good week. So you guys hang in there, and we'll see you next time.